Welcome to today's Explainer. We're about to jump straight into a fast-paced, top-down visual road trip across one of the absolute most geographically diverse countries on the entire planet, India. By the time we wrap this up, you're going to have a completely new appreciation for how these extreme physical landforms actually shape the daily survival of millions of people.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our travel itinerary for today. We're moving strictly top to bottom, starting up in the freezing northern mountains, descending into the northern plains, swinging by the western desert, exploring the southern plateau on the coastal plains, and finally ending up way out in the remote island territories. Let's get to it.
Starting off with Section 1, the mighty Northern Mountains, the literal roof of the subcontinent. And listen, this isn't just one single line of peaks. It's a massive, complex system that includes the Karakoram Range, the Provincial, and of course the main Himalayas, stretching all the way from Jammu and Kashmir right across to the Seven Sisters in the northeast.
You probably know the word Himalaya literally translates to the abode of snow. But here's why that actually matters. These young fold mountains are essentially a gigantic climate shield. They literally block those freezing, icy winds coming down from Central Asia, and they trap the life-giving monsoon rains right over India. Honestly, without them, the country would just be a barren desert.
To put the sheer scale of this into perspective, just think about 8,849 meters. That is the jaw-dropping height of Mount Everest over in neighboring Nepal. Now, within India's actual borders, the crown goes to Mount Kanchenjunga, which stands incredibly tall over in Sikkim.
The Himalayas are actually made up of three parallel ranges. First up, you have the Himadri, or Greater Himalayas. This is the absolute highest part, permanently covered in snow, holding massive glaciers like the Gangotri, which actually feeds the Ganga River. Move just a bit south and you hit the Himachal, or Lesser Himalayas, home to famous hill stations like Shimla and really crucial mountain passes like Nathula. And finally, the lowest range is the Shivalik, or Outer Himalayas. This area contains the incredibly thick, wildlife-rich forests of the Terai region.
Moving south to Section 2, the Great Northern Plains, better known as India's food bowl. We are officially trading in those steep, frozen mountain peaks for massive, flat, highly populated land stretching from Punjab all the way to Assam. And it's all enriched by this super fertile alluvium soil that's constantly being washed down from the mountains.
Now, to really get the power of these plains, we have to talk about basins. A basin is basically an area watered by a major river and all of its connecting tributaries. You see, these mountain rivers drag life-giving silt, sand, and minerals all the way down to the plains, fueling massive agricultural operations and creating one of the most densely populated regions on the face of the earth.
So here's a quick little micro-mystery for you. Why is Punjab famously called the granary of India? Well, it's precisely because of that incredibly fertile soil we just talked about. It allows for intense cultivation of crops like wheat, sugar, and rice. In fact, the central part of these plains, the Ganga Basin, is so productive it's literally known as the food bowl of India. These plains are basically powered by three sequential river basins. Over in the west, you've got the Sutlej Basin. In the center, the mighty Ganga Basin, and this is home to the famous Sangam at Prayagraj, exactly where the Ganga and Yamuna rivers meet. Finally, in the east, the Brahmaputra Basin, fed by a river that actually originates high up in Tibet where it's called the Tsangpo, before flowing all the way down into India.
All right, Section 3, the hot western desert, also known as the Thar Desert. Swinging west past the Aravalli Hills, the landscape just completely transforms. Suddenly, you're looking at scorching, rolling sand dunes stretching all the way down from Haryana into Gujarat's famous Ran of Kutch. It is a seriously harsh environment. Dust storms, extreme heat, but it is not completely lifeless. Contrast those dry sands with an oasis, which is this sort of miraculous spot where underground water finally breaches the surface. In these spots, you get date palms growing alongside tough vegetation like cactus and kikar. And that supports some incredibly resilient wildlife, like the great Indian bustard, blackbucks, and gazelles. And honestly, we can't talk about the Thar Desert without bringing up the ultimate survivalist here, the camel. They don't call it the ship of the desert for nothing. It uses its padded feet to easily walk right over the thick, shifting sand, making it the absolute most critical means of transport out here.
Down to Section 4 now, the ancient southern plateau, India's peninsular landmass. We're stepping onto India's absolute oldest landmass here. It's this massive raised plateau, bordered by the eastern and western Ghats, and it extends all the way down to Kanyakumari.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how the River Narmada acts as this perfect, natural dividing line across the entire landmass. North of the river, you have the Central Highlands. That includes the Malwa and the Chotanagpur plateaus. But south of that river, that's where you find the massive, sprawling Deccan Plateau.
And let me tell you, the Deccan Plateau is a region of immense wealth. Underground, it's absolutely packed with both metallic and non-metallic minerals. Above ground, the slopes are covered in vast plantations growing tea, coffee, and rubber. And towering above all of this in the Animalai Hills is Anamudi, the highest peak of the entire plateau.
Next up, Section 5, the narrow coastal plains. This is where the land finally meets the sea. Tracing the outer edges of the peninsula, exactly where the Ghats drop off, you find these really crucial, narrow coastal strips running along the water on both sides of the country.
You know, these two coasts are actually pretty distinct from one another. The western coastal plains, stretching from Gujarat all the way down to the Malabar coast, are much narrower, and they get significantly more rainfall. On the flip side, the eastern coastal plains, running from the Utkal coast down to the Coromandel coast, are a lot broader geographically, and they actually experience cooler winters.
Which brings us to our final stop, Section 6, the remote island territories. Let's see how all of this builds. We are now venturing completely off the mainland and into the surrounding oceans to look at landforms entirely surrounded by water. So this brings up a really great geographic question. Practically speaking, what is the difference between a peninsula and an island? Well, look at India's southernmost points. Kanyakumari is the absolute southernmost tip of the mainland peninsula. It's surrounded by water on three sides, sure, but it's still attached. Indira Point, on the other hand, is the southernmost point of the entire Indian Union, and it's located on an island, completely detached and surrounded by water on all sides. Speaking of water, just think about this number for a second. 7,516 kilometers. That is the sheer massive length of India's coastline. It is an incredibly impressive maritime border, and a really significant chunk of that number actually belongs to two totally distinct island groups. And these two groups, they're completely different in scale and makeup. Over in the Bay of Bengal, you've got the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, this huge archipelago of 572 islands, with its capital at Sri Vijayapuram. Meanwhile, floating over in the Arabian Sea, you have Lakshadweep. This is India's smallest union territory, made up of just 36 stunning coral reef islands, with their capital at Kavarati. So, to wrap up this entire journey, think of it this way. India is effectively one unified geographic machine. The towering northern mountains protect the climate. The vast river basins of the plains feed a massive population. The ancient plateau enriches the country with minerals and crops, and those long coasts and remote islands connect it to the wider oceans. It is quite literally a single country containing a continent's worth of extremes. I want to leave you with one final thought today. How does the physical geography of where you live shape your daily survival? We just saw how a single mountain range blocks icy winds and how river silt feeds millions of people. It really makes you realize that human life is always downstream from geography. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope you enjoyed the trip, and I definitely encourage you to take a much closer look at the incredible land right beneath your own feet.